The pain in my ankle was shooting all the way up to my hip with every single step I took, but the weight of my 6-month-old son in my arms kept me grounded. I wiped sweat from my forehead, trying to ignore the cars zooming past me on the shoulder of the road. I felt humiliated. I felt small. I just wanted to get some formula and go back to the basement where I was currently living. I didn't think anyone would see me. I didn't think my life was about to change in the next 30 seconds. But then a familiar silver truck slammed on its brakes and screeched to a halt right beside me. But why was I forced to walk miles on a broken foot in the first place? How did my husband let his mother strip me of my dignity and my car? And where does this nightmare actually end? I'm Sneha, and trust me, you don't want to miss how this unfolds. Let's get into the full story. The pain in my right ankle wasn't just a throb anymore. It was a scream, a sharp, jagged scream that shot all the way up my calf and settled deep into my hip bone with every single step I took. 1 step, breathe, don't fall. 2 steps, grip him tighter. I shifted the weight of my 6-month-old son, Leo, from my left hip to my right, trying to find a position that didn't feel like it was tearing my arms out of their sockets. He was heavy, a beautiful, healthy kind of heavy. But in that moment, combined with the humidity and the exhaustion, he felt like an anchor dragging me down to the asphalt. I wiped a layer of cold, clammy sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand, trying to ignore the cars zooming past me. We were walking on the shoulder of Route 9, a road that wasn't meant for pedestrians, let alone a limping woman carrying a baby. Every time a semi-truck roared past, the gust of wind nearly knocked me off balance. I had to stop, plant my good foot and shield Leo's face from the dust and grit kicking up from the tyres. I felt humiliated. That's the only word for it. No, actually, humiliated doesn't even scratch the surface. I felt hollowed out. I felt small. I felt like a failure. I kept my head down, staring at the gravel and broken glass on the side of the road, praying that no one I knew would drive by. I was Sneha. I used to be independent. I used to have a career. I used to drive a nice car. And now I was the crazy lady walking on the highway with a baby, clutching a can of formula like it was a bar of gold, just trying to get back to the basement where I was currently allowed to exist. Just 1 more mile. I told myself, you can do this. You have to do this. Leo needs to eat. My ankle throbbed in protest. It was swollen. I could feel the skin stretching tight against my sneaker. I knew it was turning a sickly shade of purple. I knew I should be on a couch with my foot elevated and an ice pack wrapped around it, but that wasn't an option. Not in my life, not anymore. I looked down at Leo. He was looking up at me with those big, trusting brown eyes, blowing little bubbles with his spit. He had no idea. He had no idea his mother was breaking apart inside. He had no idea that the only reason we were out here in this heat was because his grandmother, my own mother-in-law, had decided that her bridge game was more important than his health. It's okay, baby, I whispered, my voice cracking. We're almost home. Mommy's got you. But were we almost home? And was that place even a home anymore? I tried to focus on the rhythm of my walking to block out the pain. Limp, drag, limp, drag. Why didn't I just call my parents earlier? Why did I let it get this bad? That's the question that kept spinning in my head. It's pride, isn't it? It's that stupid, stubborn hope that if you just love your husband enough, if you just sacrifice enough for his family, eventually they will see you. Eventually they will respect you. I was wrong. I was so lost in my misery that I didn't register the sound at first. The roar of an engine getting closer, then the sudden aggressive screech of tyres biting into the pavement. The sound of a heavy vehicle slamming on its brake is terrifying when you're unprotected on the side of the road. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze, hugging Leo tight to my chest, bracing for impact. I thought maybe someone had lost control. I thought this was it. But the vehicle didn't hit us. It swerved onto the gravel shoulder about 20 feet ahead of me and came to a violent halt. Dust billowed up around the tyres. It was a silver Ford F-150. My stomach dropped. I knew that truck. I knew the dent on the rear bumper. I knew the sticker in the back window. It was my dad. Panic washed over me, hotter and more intense than the pain in my ankle. I hadn't told him. I hadn't told him how bad things had gotten with Mark and his mother. I hadn't told him about the insults, the financial control, the way I was slowly disappearing in that house. I didn't want him to worry, and I didn't want him to think I had made a mistake marrying Mark. I wanted to run. I wanted to dive into the bushes and hide, but I couldn't even walk, let alone run. The driver's side door flew open. My dad stepped out. He looked terrified. I had never seen my father look like that. He was a strong man, a stoic man. He was the kind of guy who fixed everything with a wrench and a calm voice. But right now his face was pale, almost grey. He was wearing his work clothes, his sunglasses pushed up on his forehead. He spotted me immediately. He stood there by the open door, freezing in place. His eyes travelled over me like a scanner. At first he looked at Leo, making sure the baby was okay. Then he looked at my face, sweaty, red, tear-streaked, and then his eyes dropped to my leg. I was favouring my left side so heavily it was obvious. My right ankle was swollen so bad it was bulging over the top of my shoe. That was the moment my dad spotted me limping with my baby on my hip. The traffic on the highway seemed to go silent. The wind stopped. It was just me and him. He walked toward me. He didn't run. He walked with this slow, deliberate intensity that was scarier than if he had been sprinting. Sneha! He choked out. I couldn't breathe. Hi, Dad. He stopped 2 feet away from me. He looked at the empty road stretching out behind me, miles of asphalt with no sidewalk. Then he looked at the heavy diaper bag digging into my shoulder and the can of formula I was gripping so hard my knuckles were white. His voice was shaking, vibrating with a mix of confusion and rising anger. Why are you walking? Where's your car? He knew my car. He helped me pick it out, a safe, reliable SUV, the car that was specifically bought to keep his grandson safe. I opened my mouth to lie. I wanted to say, oh, it broke down, or I just felt like some exercise, but the words wouldn't come out. The pain in my leg flared up, a sharp reminder of my reality, and I looked at my dad, the man who had carried me on his shoulders when I was little so I wouldn't get my shoes dirty, and I just couldn't lie to him anymore. The dam broke. I couldn't look him in the eye. I stared at the cracked pavement, at the little weeds growing through the concrete, and I whispered the truth that broke me. I said his mum took it, said I'm lucky they let me stay. The words hung in the hot air between us. His mum took it, lucky they let me stay. I flinched, waiting for him to yell. I expected him to say, why did you let her? Or, where is your husband? Or, why are you so weak, Sneha? I was so used to being blamed in my own house that I expected it from him too. But the shouting never came. There was a silence that lasted maybe 5 seconds, but it felt like 5 years. I slowly looked up at him. My dad wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me toward the direction of my house. His jaw was set so hard I could see the muscle twitching. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, tight enough to turn the skin white. The colour had returned to his face, but it wasn't pale anymore. It was red, a dangerous, quiet red. He took a deep breath. He unclosed his fists. He reached out and gently took the heavy diaper bag from my shoulder. Then he took the can of formula from my hand. He looked at me and his eyes weren't angry at me. They were filled with a heartbreak so deep it made my chest ache. My dad just said, get in the car. We're fixing this tonight. His voice was terrifyingly calm. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a promise. I didn't argue. I couldn't. I hobbled toward the truck. My dad opened the passenger door for me. He took Leo from my arms with such gentleness, cooing at him softly, completely switching modes from angry protector to loving grandfather in a split second. He buckled Leo into the car seat he kept in the back, just in case. Then he came back to help me. Lean on me, he said. I put my arm around his neck. He took my weight, almost all of it, and helped me lift my injured leg into the cab of the truck. As he closed the door and walked around to the driver's side, I sat there in the air conditioning, shaking uncontrollably. The cool air hit my sweaty skin and I started to shiver. Tears finally started streaming down my face, hot and fast. I watched him through the windshield as he walked around the front of the truck. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, looked at it for a second, and then shoved it back in. He looked like a man going to war. When he got in and started the engine, he didn't say a word. He just merged back onto the road, but he didn't turn toward his house. He turned the wheel toward my house, or the house that I lived in. Dad, I whispered, my voice trembling, where are we going? We are going to get your things, he said. His eyes were fixed on the road, but his grip on the steering wheel was so tight the leather was creaking. And we are getting your car. Dad, please, I begged, wiping my eyes. Oh, don't make a scene. Linda, she's home. She'll kick me out. She threatens it every day. Mark isn't there to mediate. It's going to be a disaster. My dad glanced at me. The look in his eyes sent a shiver down my spine. And it wasn't anger at me. It was the realisation that his daughter, the girl he raised to be strong and proud, had been reduced to this, scared of her own mother-in-law, scared of losing a roof over her head. She said his mum took it, he repeated almost to himself. She said, lucky they let me stay. In the house I helped you put the down payment on. I went silent. I shrank back into the seat. I had forgotten that part, or maybe I had tried to forget it because Linda never acknowledged it. My parents had given us $40,000 for the down payment as a wedding gift. It was their life savings. They gave it so we wouldn't have to struggle. Linda always acted like it was Mark's house, like I was a guest she was graciously tolerating, but my family's money, my father's sweat and blood, was buried in the foundation of the house. I didn't want to bring up the money, Dad, I whispered. I thought it would make things worse. Sneha, he said softly, turning onto my street. Things are already worse. You are walking on a broken leg on a highway. It doesn't get worse than this, but it's going to get better right now. We pulled into the driveway, and there it was. My SUV parked right in the centre of the driveway. Linda was home. Seeing the car there shiny and safe while my foot throbbed in agony triggered something in me. Rage, pure hot rage mixed with fear. She had the car. She was probably inside drinking her tea, sitting in the air conditioning while I was out there battling semis and heat stroke. My dad put the truck in park. The engine idled. He unbuckled his seatbelt. Stay here, he said. Let me handle the first part. Dad, what are you going to do? I asked, panic rising in my throat again. Linda screams. She lies. She'll call the cops and say you're threatening her. My dad turned to me. He placed a hand on my shoulder. His hand was warm and heavy. Let her call the cops, he said. And in fact, I hope she does, because I'm going to remind them and her who actually hold the power here. He opened the door and stepped out. I watched from the window as he stormed up the walkway. He didn't look like my dad anymore. He looked like a storm making landfall. He didn't knock. He didn't ring the doorbell. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the spare key I'd given him years ago for emergencies, and unlocked the front door. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. This was it. The line was crossed. There was no going back to normal after this. No more pretending. No more keeping the peace. My dad had just kicked the door open on my secret life of misery. I looked at Leo in the back seat. He was asleep, peaceful and unaware that his grandfather was about to burn his world down to save her. I took a deep breath, grabbed the door handle, pushed it open. I couldn't let my dad do this alone. Even if I had to crawl, I was going in there with him, because deep down, amidst the fear, I felt something else stirring, something I hadn't felt in 3 years married, hope, and a tiny spark of excitement. What is he going to do to her? I wondered as I limped toward the front door. What happens when a bully finally meets someone they can't push around? I was about to find out. I hobbled through the front door, the cool air of the hallway hitting my face like a slap. My dad was already halfway to the living room, his boots heavy on the hardwood floor. But before we get to the explosion that was about to happen in that living room, you need to understand something. You need to understand how a smart, capable woman like me ended up broken and walking on a highway. You need to understand the slow, suffocating poison that was my life with Mark and Linda. It didn't start this way. It never does, right? That's the trick. 3 years ago, Mark was perfect. He was charming. He opened doors for me and he listened when I talked about my dreams. He seemed independent. He seemed like a man who knew who he was. But the moment we said, I do, the mask didn't just slip, it fell off and shattered. Or rather, his mother, Linda, entered the picture. And she didn't just enter, she invaded. Linda was the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and believed that her son was a prince, while I was just the help he happened to be sleeping with. She had this way of smiling that didn't reach her eyes, a cold, shark-like grin that sent shivers down my spine. When Mark and I bought this house, our first house, we were so excited. We dreamed about painting the nursery, hosting barbecues, building a life, but the ink was barely dry on the mortgage papers when Linda announced she was moving into the guest suite for a few weeks to help us settle in. It's just temporary, honey, Mark had said, kissing my forehead. She's lonely since Dad died. Be patient. A few weeks turned into a few months, then a year, and she didn't help. She took over. Slowly, systematically, I lost control of my own home. First, Mark gave her a key without asking me. Then he gave her the code to the garage. Then came the access to our joint bank account. For household emergencies, she had said, batting her eyelashes at Mark. What if the boiler breaks while you're at work and Sneha is busy? Busy, I was working a full-time job as a graphic designer, but to Linda, my career was just a cute little hobby. The real nightmare began when I got pregnant with Leo. When I went on maternity leave, my income dropped. We had planned for this, we had savings, but Linda saw it as an opportunity. The comments started as whispers. Are you sure we need the organic spinach? She'd say in the grocery store, loudly enough for people to hear. Mark works so hard for his money. You're draining Mark's resources, she would say at dinner, sipping on a glass of expensive Cabernet I had paid for. You're lucky he keeps you around. Most men wouldn't tolerate a wife who just sits. I was nursing a newborn, cleaning a 4-bedroom house and cooking 3 meals a day for her ungrateful mouth. And Mark, my husband, the man who vowed to protect me, he did nothing, absolutely nothing. Every time I cried to him at night, whispering so his mother wouldn't hear, he would just sigh. She's just old-fashioned, honey. She doesn't mean it like that. Don't be disrespectful. She helps us a lot. Helps us. She hadn't lifted a finger in 2 years. But things reached a breaking point last week. The incident that led to my limp. I was carrying a basket of laundry down the stairs. Linda had left one of her grandson's hard plastic trucks right in the middle of the 3rd step. She knew I was coming down. She knew I couldn't see my feet over the basket. I stepped on it. My foot twisted violently. I heard a pop. I tumbled down the last 4 steps, landing hard on my hip. The pain was blinding. I screamed. Mark rushed in from the kitchen. Sneha, are you okay? Linda followed him, holding a cup of tea, looking bored. I think I broke it, I sobbed, clutching my ankle. It was already swelling, turning a dark, angry purple. Mark, I need to go to the urgent care. Mark looked at my ankle, then at his mother. Linda took a sip of her tea. Oh, stop being dramatic, Sneha. It's just a sprain. You don't need a doctor. Do you know how much the ER copay is? Mark has a meeting in an hour. He can't spend all day sitting in a waiting room because you're clumsy. Mark froze. He looked at me, writhing in pain on the floor. Then he looked at his watch. Babe, maybe try some ice first, he said weakly. If it still hurts tonight, we'll go. I laid there on the floor, staring at the ceiling, tears running into my ears. And that was the moment I realised I was alone in this marriage. So I stayed home. I limped. I wrapped it myself. I took Tylenol. But Linda wasn't done with me. She smelled blood in the water. She knew I was injured, weak and vulnerable, so she went for the kill. 2 days ago, she came into my bedroom and I was breastfeeding Leo, my foot propped up on pillows. She didn't knock. She just walked in and held out her hand. I need your car keys, she said. I blinked. What? My car's in the shop, she said, checking her nails. And I have a bridge club meeting at the country club. I need to take the SUV. My stomach tightened. I drive or drove a decent SUV. My parents helped me buy it before the marriage. It's safe, reliable, and most importantly, it has the baby's car seat base installed. It's my lifeline. I can't give you the car, Linda, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I pointed to my purple swollen ankle. What if the baby gets sick? Or what if I need to leave? I can't walk. I need the car here in case of an emergency. She laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a cold, cruel sound that made the hair on my arm stand up. Oh, please, she sneered. You can't even walk to the bathroom properly. You aren't going anywhere. Besides, since you aren't working right now, that car is technically family property. You don't contribute financially, so you don't get to hoard the assets. Hand it over. No, I said firmly. Just then, Mark appeared in the doorway. He looked tired. He hated conflict. What's going on? He asked. Your wife is being selfish, Linda said, turning on the victim act instantly. I just need the car for a few hours. She's refusing to help me. I looked at Mark, begging him with my eyes. Please, I thought, please be my husband for once. Defend me. Mark, she has her own car or she can Uber. If something happens to Leo, I can't drive him to the hospital without the car. Mark rubbed his face. He looked at his phone. He looked at the wall. He looked anywhere but at me. Just give it to her, babe, he mumbled. You're not using it. You're on bed rest anyway. It's not a big deal. Don't cause a fight. My heart shattered into a million pieces. Linda smirked. She walked over to the nightstand, snatched the keys and dangled them in front of my face. Thanks, dear, she said to Mark. Then she looked. Try to get some cleaning done while I'm gone. The floors are looking dusty. She took my freedom. She took my safety net. And that brings us to today, the final straw. We ran out of formula this morning and I went to the pantry, empty. I asked Linda, who was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling on her iPad, if she could pick some up on her way back from her errands with my car. She didn't even look up. I'm not your servant, Sneha, she said. If you want it, go get it. Linda, please, I said, leaning on the counter to support my bad leg. I can't drive. You have my car. Mark is at work. The store is 1.5 miles away. Sounds like a you problem, she said. Maybe the walk will do you good. Help you lose that baby weight. I felt the blood drain from my face. I went to call an Uber. I opened the app. Payment declined. I checked my bank app. The joint account, the one my paycheck used to go into, was almost empty. Linda had transferred the grocery money to her personal account for safekeeping because she thought I was spending too much on unnecessary things. I had no choice. I looked at Leo, who was starting fast from hunger. I looked at my swollen ankle. I looked at Linda, who was ignoring me. I wrapped my ankle as tight as I could with an ace bandage. I put on my sneakers, wincing as I forced my foot inside. I put Leo on my hip. I walked out the door. Linda didn't even turn around. I made it to the store. It took me 45 minutes of agonising pain. I bought the formula with the frantic few dollars of cash I found crumpled at the bottom of my purse. But the walk back, that's when the adrenaline wore off. That's when the pain became unbearable. That's when I realised that my marriage was over, but I was too broken to know how to. That's when my dad found me. And now, here we are, standing in the hallway of the house that was supposed to be my dream home, but had become my prison. I watched my dad walk into the living room. Linda was sitting on the beige couch, the one I wasn't allowed to sit on because I might mess up the cushion. She was watching a talk show, her feet propped up on the coffee table. She heard the footsteps. She didn't turn around. Did you get the formula? She asked, her voice dripping with condescension. Took you long enough. My dad didn't answer. He just stood there. The silence stretched out. Linda frowned. She sensed something was wrong. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes widened when she saw it wasn't me. It was a man. A big, angry man. Who let you in? She snapped, sitting up straighter. Oh, it's you. She looked at my dad with disdain. She always thought my family was blue collar and beneath her, even though my dad ran a successful construction business and probably had more money in his savings account than she had in debt. My dad ignored her. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how she was. He walked straight to the decorative hook by the door where my keys were hanging. He grabbed them. He shoved them deep into his pocket. Hey, Linda shouted, scrambling to stand up. What do you think you're doing? Those are mine for the week. My dad turned slowly to face her. Where is Mark? He asked. His voice wasn't loud. It was booming. It vibrated in the floorboards. It was the voice of a patriarch who was done playing games. Linda flinched, but she regained her composure quickly. She was a bully, and bullies don't like to back down. He's on his way home, she scoffed, crossing her arms. And when he gets here, he's going to throw you out. You have no right to barge in here. Your daughter is already on thin ice. My dad took a step closer. Thin ice? Yes, Linda spat out. She's lazy. She's draining my son's resources. She's disrespectful. And now she's bringing her father here to intimidate me. Mark won't stand for this. Shut up, my dad said. It wasn't a scream. It was a command. A flat, hard command. Linda gasped. Her mouth fell open. Excuse me? I found my daughter walking on the side of the highway, my dad said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. With a broken ankle, with my grandson, in 90-degree heat because you took her car. Linda rolled her eyes. She needs the exercise, she sneered, and it's not her car. Everything in this marriage is shared. I needed it for my club. You made her walk, my dad repeated, and as if he couldn't believe a human being could be so cruel. You stole her means of transport and you starved her of money. She has money, Linda yelled. She just spends it all. I'm teaching her fiscal responsibility. Just then, the front door handle turned. We all froze. Mark walked in. He looked tired. He was loosening his tie. He stopped dead when he saw the scene. Me, leaning against the wall, sweaty, dirty, holding the baby. My dad, standing like a stone statue in the middle of the room. His mother, red-faced and furious. What is going on? Mark asked, dropping his briefcase. He looked confused. He looked weak. Your father-in-law is stealing the car, Linda yelled, pointing a shaking finger at my dad. He barged in here like a criminal. Call the police, Mark. Get him out of my house. Mark looked at my dad. Dave, what are you doing? My dad turned to Mark. The look on his face changed from anger to pure disappointment. You let your wife walk a mile on a sprained ankle, my dad asked. You let your mother take her vehicle? Mark looked nervous. His eyes darted between me and his mother. He started to sweat. Look, Dave, it's a family matter, he stammered. Linda needed the car. Sneha isn't working right now, so she doesn't really have a say in... My dad took a step toward Mark. Mark actually took a step back. She isn't working because she's raising your child, my dad interrupted. And since you want to talk about who pays for what, let's talk about this house. The room went quiet. Dead quiet. Even Linda stopped breathing for a second. This was the secret weapon, the truth that everyone ignored. I put $40,000 into this house, my dad said, his voice ringing clear and true. I have the bank records. It was a gift to my daughter and her husband, a gift based on love, based on the idea that you would build a family here. He looked around the room with disgust. But since you two seem to think she's a guest here who should be lucky to stay, I'm revoking the gift. You can't do that, Mark stammered, his face turning pale. Watch me, Dad said. And that is where the real fight begins. Because Mark and Linda thought they were dealing with a helpless young mother. They didn't realise they had just poked a sleeping bear, and now the bear was awake. Watch me, Dad said. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Mark blinked, his face draining of colour. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the cookie jar, not a grown man who owned a home. Dave, be reasonable. You can't just ask for that money back. It was a wedding gift. It's in the equity of the house. It was a conditional gift, my dad said, his voice terrifyingly steady. He wasn't yelling anymore. He had moved past anger into something cold, calculated. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. I spoke to my lawyer on the drive over. Since the money was documented as a family gift for the purchase of the primary residence of my daughter and her husband, and you are currently creating a hostile environment that is forcing her out, that condition is broken. Linda let out a shrill, disbelief-filled laugh. Hostile environment? Oh, please. Because I asked to borrow a car. You're bluffing, Dave. You're just a contractor. You don't know how the law works. My dad turned his gaze to Linda. It was like watching a lion look at a buzzing fly. I'm suing you for the full amount plus interest, he said simply. I will put a lien on this property so fast your head will spin. You won't be able to sell it, refinance it, or even look at it without my permission. Or, he paused. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Or what? Linda asked, her voice trembling slightly for the first time. She crossed her arms tighter, trying to hold on to her authority. Or we can do this the easy way. What's the easy way? Mark asked, stepping forward. He looked desperate. He knew they didn't have $40,000 lying around. He knew they were living paycheck to paycheck because of his spending and Linda's demand. Sneha is leaving with me tonight, my dad announced. She is taking the car, she is taking the baby, and you are going to sign a document admitting that you forced her out of the marital home. I'm not signing anything, Linda shrieked. Her face turned a blotchy red. This is my son's house. I'll kick her out myself. Who does she think she is? It reminds me of that story I saw online. My mother-in-law kicked me out, so I bought her house. Except you don't have that kind of money, Dave. You're nobody. My dad laughed. It was a dry, humourless sound, a sound that made Mark flinch. Linda, you have no idea what I have, but you're right about one thing. That story is about to become your reality, because if you don't sign, I will make sure Mark loses this house in the divorce. I will ensure the child support payments are astronomical, and I will make sure everyone in this town, everyone at your bridge club, everyone at your church knows you made a crippled mother walk the highway for baby formula. The threat hit its mark. Linda's social standing was her God. The thought of being exposed as a monster terrified her more than losing money. Mark looked at his mother, then at me. For the first time in 3 years, I saw true fear in his eyes. Not fear of his mother, but fear of losing his safety net. Fear of the reality crashing down. He walked toward me. Sneha, he said, his voice taking on that pleading, manipulative tone I knew so well. He reached out a hand. Baby, don't leave. We can talk about this. You're emotional right now. Your hormones. You know how you get. Just calm down. Mom, give the keys back. Dave, let's just sit down and have a beer. I looked at his hand. It was the same hand that had put a ring on my finger. The same hand that had signed away my rights to my own home. I looked at his face. I was searching for my husband. I was searching for the man I love. But all I saw was a coward. A man who would let his wife limp in agony rather than upset his mommy. I already have the keys, my dad said, patting his pocket. He stepped between Mark and me, creating a physical barrier. Sneha, go pack a bag, just the essentials for you and Leo. We'll buy new clothes tomorrow. Sneha, don't do this, Mark pleaded. If you leave, you're abandoning the marriage. That looks bad in court. Abandoning, I whispered. My voice was raspy from crying, but it was steady. I looked him dead in the eye. Mark, you abandoned this marriage the day you let your mother move in. You abandoned me when I fell down those stairs and you told me to put ice on it because you had a meeting. You abandoned me today when I begged for help and you looked at your phone. I didn't know it was that bad, he stammered. You knew, I said. You just didn't care. I'm done, Mark, I whispered. The realisation washed over me like a wave of relief. I'm done being lucky to be here. I turned around and started to hobble toward the stairs. Every step was painful. My ankle throbbed with a burning heat, but I felt lighter. I heard Linda start screaming again in the living room. She's taking my grandson. Mark, stop her. She can't take Leo. I heard movement. I heard Mark start to come after, but then I heard my dad's voice, low and dangerous. If you take one step up those stairs, Mark, I will consider it a threat to my daughter's safety and I will defend her. Do not test me. The footsteps stopped. My dad stood at the bottom of the stairs, acting as a guard dog, a silent, immovable wall between me and the people who wanted to break me. I made it to the bedroom, our bedroom. It didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a hotel room I was checking out of. I grabbed the diaper bag. I shoved diapers, wipes and formula into it. I grabbed Leo's favourite blanket and I grabbed his little stuffed elephant. Then I went to my closet. I didn't take much. 2 pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my comfortable sneakers. I went to the jewellery box on the dresser. I took the necklace my grandmother gave me. I left the diamond earrings Mark gave me for our first anniversary. I didn't want them. They felt heavy. I looked around the room one last time. The photos of our wedding were still on the wall. We looked so happy. It was all a lie, I thought. Or maybe it wasn't a lie, but it was a weak love. And weak love isn't enough. I wiped my face, hoisted the bags onto my good shoulder and picked up Leo again. We're going to Grandma and Grandpa's house, I whispered to him. He cooed and grabbed my nose. He didn't know we were escaping. He just knew he was with his mama. When I came downstairs, the living room was tense. Linda was pacing. Mark was sitting on the couch with his head in his hands, crying. My dad looked up. He saw the bag. He saw Leo. He walked over and took the heavy bags from me instantly. We're leaving, Dad announced. You can't take my grandson, Linda yelled, lunging forward as if she was going to physically grab Leo from my arms. He belongs to this family. My dad stopped her with a single look. He didn't even raise a hand. He just stared her down with such intensity that she froze mid-step. If you come near them, he said, enunciating every word, I will call the police and report the theft of the vehicle and child endangerment. I have photos of Sneha's injuries. I have the GPS data from her phone showing her walking on the highway. Do you really want the cops to see that? Linda paled. She backed down. She knew she would lose that battle. Don't test me, Linda. We're fixing this tonight and this is the fix. My dad turned to me. Let's go, sweetheart. We walked out the front door. The sun was setting now. The sky was a beautiful mix of orange and purple. It was the same sky that had beaten down on me just an hour ago, but now it looked like a painting of freedom. We walked to the driveway. My dad opened the door to my SUV, the one I paid for, the one she stole. He put my bags in the passenger seat. Then he did something that made me cry all over again. He took the car seat base out of my car where Linda had left it carelessly tossed in the trunk and he installed it properly. He clicked it into place. He checked it twice. He tugged on the straps. Mark watched from the living room window. I could see his silhouette. He was just watching. He was too coward to come outside. He was too coward to fight for his wife. I buckled Leo in. He fell asleep almost instantly. I climbed into the driver's seat. My ankle screamed in protest, but I didn't care. The steering wheel felt cool under my hands. It felt like control. As I started the engine, I rolled down the window. My dad leaned in. His face softened. The anger was gone, replaced by pure love. Follow me to the house, he said softly. Mum has dinner waiting. She made your favourite chicken curry. We're going to call a divorce lawyer in the morning. Thank you, Dad, I sobbed, the relief finally crashing over me. I thought I was stuck. I really thought I was stuck forever. He reached in and squeezed my hand. You're never stuck, he said. Not while I'm breathing. Not while you have family who loves you. He walked back to his truck. He pulled out of the driveway first, leading the way. I put my car in reverse. I backed out of that driveway for the last time. I looked at the house one last time. I saw Linda standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face a mask of bitter defeat. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't feel humiliated. I felt a strange vibrating power in my chest. I shifted into drive and I drove away. As I watched that house disappear in my rearview mirror, shrinking smaller and smaller until it was just a dot, I realised something. The pain in my ankle was still there, but the pain in my heart, it was gone. But the story doesn't end here because my dad wasn't just talking big to scare them. He meant every word about the lawsuit. And what happened next? Well, let's just say that karma didn't just knock on their door. It kicked it down. The drive to my parents' house was a blur of tears and taillights. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Mark's car chasing after us or maybe police lights flashing because Linda had actually made up some lie about me kidnapping my own son. But the road behind behind me remained empty. It was just me, my dad's truck ahead of me, and the darkening sky. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, the driveway I grew up playing basketball on, my mum was already standing on the porch. Dad must have called her. She didn't wait for me to get out. She ran to the car. I opened the door and practically fell into her arms. I smelled her perfume, lavender and vanilla, and I just broke. I sobbed into her shoulder, letting go of 3 years of held back tears. Dad came around and took Leo from the back seat, holding him close while Mum held me up because my ankle had finally decided to quit on me completely. That night, for the first time in months, I slept. I didn't sleep with one eye open, waiting for Linda to barge in. I didn't sleep worrying about money. I slept in my old childhood bed with Leo in a portable crib next to me, knowing my dad was downstairs checking the lock. But if I thought the hard part was over, I was wrong. The emotional part was over. The war was just beginning. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee. I hobbled down to the kitchen on crutches my dad had dug out of the attic. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table and he wasn't in his work clothes. He was wearing a suit. There was a man sitting across from him, a man with sharp glasses and a shark-like grin. "Sneha," Dad said, gesturing to the chair. "This is Mr. Sterling. He's the best divorce and property attorney in the state. Eat your breakfast. We have work to do." We spent the next 3 hours laying it all out. Mr. Sterling listened as I told him everything. The verbal abuse, the financial control, the car theft, the injury. When I told him about the $40,000 down payment, his eyes lit up. "It's a conditional gift," Mr. Sterling said, tapping his pen on the notepad. "Legally, parents often give money for a down payment with a gift letter to satisfy the mortgage lender. However, we can argue that the gift was conditional on the marriage remaining intact and the home being your primary residence by creating a hostile environment that forced a constructive eviction. That's the legal term for what they did to you. They broke the contract." "So what does that mean?" I asked, feeding Leo his bottle. "It means," Mr. Sterling smiled, "that we aren't just asking for a divorce. We are suing for the return of the investment, plus damages for emotional distress, plus legal fees. And since Mark can't afford that, we forced the sale of the house." The aftermath was messy, but oh, was it satisfying. My dad followed through on every single threat. 2 days later, Mark was served with the papers at his office. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it. He apparently broke down crying in the break room. He texted me 100 times that day. "Sneha, please, this is insane. My mum is sorry. She didn't mean it. We can't sell the house. Where will mum go?" I didn't reply. I followed Mr. Sterling's advice, radio silence. The court hearings were brutal. Linda tried to lie. She tried to tell the judge that I was unstable, that I walked on the highway to seek attention. But my dad, he was ready. He had the photos of my purple, swollen ankle. He had the timestamped GPS data from my phone showing my slow, painful walk to the store and back. He had the bank statement showing Linda draining our joint account. The judge was not amused. In fact, the judge looked at Mark and asked, "Sir, are you telling me you allowed your mother to confiscate your wife's vehicle while she was injured?" Mark looked down at his shoes and mumbled, "It's complicated." "It doesn't seem complicated to me," the judge said. The ruling came down like a hammer. Because Linda had admitted to taking the car in front of my dad and because the financial abuse was documented, the court sided with us. Mark was ordered to repay the $40,000 down payment to my father immediately. He was also ordered to pay me my share of the home's equity, and he was ordered to pay child support based on his income before Linda started meddling with it. They didn't have the cash. They were drowning in debt because of Linda's lifestyle. They had no choice and they had to sell the house. The for sale sign went up on the lawn a week later. I drove by once just to look at it. The house I thought was my forever home. It looked smaller now. It looked just like a pile of bricks and wood. It wasn't a home. It was just a building where I had been unhappy. We forced the sale. The market was hot, so it sold fast. The proceeds were split. My dad got his money back, every cent. I got my share of the equity, which gave me enough to start over. Mark and Linda, after paying off the mortgage, the realtor fees, and my dad, they were left with almost nothing. Here is the part that feels like true justice. Mark couldn't afford to buy another house. His credit was shot from the legal battle and he didn't have a down payment anymore. They had to rent, and not a nice house with a guest suite. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It's a fine apartment, nothing wrong with it, but for a woman like Linda, It was a humiliation. No more garden, no more bridge club hosting, no more pretending she was the queen of the manor. I heard through a mutual friend that Linda hates it. She blames Mark for losing everything. They argue constantly. The walls are thin, so the neighbours hear everything. It seems that without me there to be the punching bag, they have turned on each other. Mark finally realised that his mother wasn't his protector. She was his anchor, dragging him down. But it was too late. He had made his choice. As for me, I'm living with my parents for now, but not for long. I'm looking for a small place of my own, just for me and Leo. My ankle is fully healed. I can run now. I can chase Leo around the park without a wind's pain. I went back to work. I picked up my freelance design clients again. It turns out when you aren't being told you're worthless every day, your creativity comes flooding back. I still have my SUV. I keep the keys in my pocket or on a hook by the door. Sometimes I just look at them. They represent more than just a car now. They represent my freedom. They represent the fact that I can leave whenever I want. A few days ago, I ran into Mark at the grocery store. It's a small town. It was bound to happen. He looked 10 years older. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked tired. He saw me in the aisle holding a box of Leo's favourite cereal. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, my hair in a messy bun, looking happy, healthy. He stopped his car. Sneha, he said, you look good. I am good, Mark, I said, and my voice was steady, no shaking, no fear. I miss you, he whispered. I miss Leo. Mum is driving me crazy. I looked at him and I felt a pang of pity, not love, just pity. You had a choice, Mark, I said softly. You chose her, now you have to live with her. I didn't wait for a response. I walked past him, my head held high, and I went to the checkout. I paid for my groceries with my own card, with my own money. Sometimes you need to hit rock bottom or limp along the side of a highway in 90-degree heat to realise you deserve better. Sometimes you need to feel the humiliation to find your pride, and sometimes you just need your dad to remind you who you really are. My dad didn't just save me from the side of the road that day. He saved me from a life of shrinking myself to fit into someone else's small, unhappy box. He reminded me that I am a daughter, a mother, and a woman who deserves respect. If you are listening to this and you feel stuck, if you feel like you are walking on a broken ankle carrying the weight of the world, please listen to me. You are not stuck. You are not weak. There is a silver truck coming for you. Maybe it's a supportive friend. Maybe it's a family member. Or maybe the driver of that truck is you. Maybe you are the one who needs to slam on the brakes, look in the mirror and say, we're fixing this tonight. You are worth more than a roof over your head that comes with strings attached. You are worth more than silence. You are worth more than being lucky to be there. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, and honestly, my heart was racing just telling you about that day on the highway. But I'm glad I'm out on the other side. I'm glad I can share this with you. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about how we handle life's crazy curveballs, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and helps other women find these stories. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, Voice of Sneha. We are building such a strong community here, a family of people who support each other and stand up for what's right. I have so many more stories to share with you, some happy, some intense, but all real. Stay strong, stay safe, and never, ever let anyone take your keys. I'm Sneha, and I'll see you in the next video.